today to talk about the ubiquitous Craftsman 109 lathe. These are either loved or hated by most people. Very few people have a neutral opinion. I do have a neutral opinion. I think they're fine for what they are. But I want to talk a little bit about this one right here, which was my first machine tool, if you want to call it that. And this is kind of what got me interested in getting machine shop stuff. I got this about 5 years ago from a friend. I did some work on his house and he did a partial trade for this. And it has been restored by me twice now. And I've done some upgrades to it, and I was just going to talk about some of those upgrades that I've done, and maybe they would be helpful for other people to copy, try their own version of it. So I will move the camera in and show you some of the things I've done. All right, so the first thing you might notice is different is this chuck backplate. This I just made from a piece of steel. Nothing fancy with that. That's just so that I could use a newer style chuck with a scroll key, whereas the other one kind of had the two poles you have to tighten, and I just wasn't digging that. And you might also notice this thread looks a little large. Well, there's what the original one looks like. And you can see that I have increased that significantly. This is a 1/2 inch something. The new one I made is 3/4 16 maybe. But it's the same as I think the Shoreline lathes, so I thought it would be nice to have something somewhat universal and not an oddball thread. I mean, obviously I could make it anything I wanted, but you know, it'd be nice to be able to find other chucks that are about the same thread. So I'm gonna pull this apart just for you and show you some of the other things I've done here. All right, I finally finagled that out. So you can see the difference from the old one to the new spindle I made. I increased the size from, I believe originally it's 550 thousandths, and I went up to 600 thousandths. I also increased the size of the key for no real reason other than the original ones just seemed so tiny. Thought I just moved it up a little bit. This bushing is new. I made that, and of course that diameter has to be a little bit larger, as well as the ID of this rear bushing, as well as the ID of these bushings, as well as the ID of that. And since I enlarged the keyway, then this keyway had to go bigger, and since I don't have a broach set, that was basically done with a file, so that was a little tedious, but luckily it's pretty soft metal. Oh yeah, I also had to enlarge the ID of the drive gear on the end. That was getting pretty thin, but there's still plenty of meat here, so I felt okay about that. All right, let me move you around and show you the next thing. All right, we're handheld now. I'll show you some of the other things here. You probably noticed those gibs are brass. I made new ones to replace the steel ones. The steel ones were pretty worn out. I thought the brass might do a better job. The pieces that ride on the underside of the bed there, those I also made out of brass because the originals were worn. And then this piece that clamps it on the back, I added a couple of Phillips head screws just because that was what I had. Because normally it only clamped in the center, and I felt like that probably introduced quite a bit of flex, so I added those to kind of stiffen it up. Another modification I did, it's pretty minor. Put a swivel handle back here because I spent a lot of time just cranking this thing to move the carriage back and forth. And it'll twist your wrist off after a while. Another upgrade I was really happy with was this quick change tool post from A to Z CNC. These things are all over now on eBay and all the usual Chinese places, but this one's actually made in the USA, and the price isn't much different from those cheap ones. I have the original lantern post there, rocker post, that sometimes comes in handy. But otherwise, I highly recommend this little quick change set. It's pretty cool. To give you a sense of scale, here's my Schar's AXA tool post on my 12-inch Atlas, and here is the one for the 109 lathe. It is just kind of comically small. But it does the job. So there you have it. Just a quick little overview. This is kind of like that hammer video, sort of another one of those that falls into the category of things I would have made a build video from if I were making build videos. The video I do have, I'll try to include it so that you can see what little pictures and clips I did take. Here's a pretty fun one of me turning the brass bushing. The little tiny compound knob on my Atlas 12-inch is tightened up pretty tight so that it doesn't, introduce any chatter or anything. So I ended up using a little 3/8 ratchet to turn it. So yeah, that's about it. The 109 lathe, it's what got me interested in machining and what gave me an appreciation for, bigger tools. Because on this little guy, everything's got to be perfect. Any little bit of, if you've got anything a little bit loose, it's going to chatter. If you've got just anything that's not absolutely perfect, the machine will let you know. So you learn early on the things that you can kind of get away with, and then when you move up to I'm not going to say an Atlas 12-inch from the 1930s is by any means a real lathe, but when you move up to a realer lathe, you've really learned already how to make the best of what you got. So that's about it. Catch you later.